welcome everybody to another JP Chalk Talks uh, interview session. I've got my good friend here and buddy Tyler Sansom from First Capital Church, or Tyler, is it Church Anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm gonna have a conversation with Tyler here for a little bit of time. We're gonna talk to him what he's up to and what they've done from a digital church perspective. Like I talked about in the past videos that I've posted on YouTube and other locations, is that we're looking at areas of what are people doing things a little bit differently. How are we approaching this? And certainly the online streaming aspect is grown substantially. So let's talk to Tyler for a little bit of time and hear from him, because I think you're going to be enjoy this conversation and hear what Tyler's up to. He's got a fantastic project he's working on. I'll let him share a little bit about that later. So Tyler, welcome. Glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Tyler, maybe just take a few minutes or a moment just to share about yourself and maybe about where you're at and what your focus and who is First Capital Christian Church, or our Church Anywhere.
Yep. My name's Tyler. I've been on staff here at First Capital. We're in Corydon, Indiana, which is right outside of Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been on staff here for about 8 years-ish. I have a wife, and we recently adopted a teenager in February that we've been fostering for a while. So we now have a child, which is awesome. A child that's only like 10 years younger than me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So First Capital is in a town called Corydon. We're a town of about 3,500 people. And pre-COVID, in person, we were running close to 1,000. So it's like a super unique scenario. We're about 35 minutes from Louisville, so we're kind of like people live here to get that small town feel, but they work in the city. So that's like our makeup. And then we've been doing online ministry now for almost 5 years, which has grown exponentially over the years. We have 21 microsites, so we've been doing microsites for about 4 years. So 21 of those, and a really large prison ministry via our digital content, to where we're reaching like 2,000 to 3,000 prisoners a week. And then obviously the online campus. So all of that culminated with us starting a separate entity called Church Anywhere. So it's still under like the umbrella of First Capital Ministries, but we're the digital branch of First Capital Ministries now. So we have a fully staffed digital church plant that's been running for about 6 months now.
That's fantastic. And obviously, with the changes that, just in terms of where you were for your ministry and just as you share a little bit about that, things have changed quite a bit, right? We talk about them, you talked about microsites and the kind of the different areas of the ministry in terms of the digital reach, if you will, through the prison ministry, which I've seen a couple of your videos that you've shared where people have had, talked about the impact it's had, which has been fantastic. And as we've kind of gone into this, when the pandemic hit, several months ago, obviously, as I shared talking to Stephen or to Steve Fogg, we talked about that. It was kind of that hair and fire moment for a lot of people jumping into the digital space that were a church or organization. And as they've kind of moved into that format, they had to really come up to speed. Obviously, for those like yourself that were already kind of doing it in kind of moving forward in a direction already, were there any changes that you saw, just for a moment, talking about when, obviously that I'm sure there is, but just the changes with COVID and the pandemic has kind of altered maybe the format of what you guys were maybe originally, how you were running your services or some of the activities?
Yeah, we've been doing online ministry for a while, so we weren't like super panicky or anything when COVID hit. It stinks that we couldn't meet in person, but we were pretty prepared for what would happen. But we had got a chance to reevaluate some of the stuff that we've needed to reevaluate for a while. So our senior pastor several times has said that with this crisis came opportunity. And I believe it. It gave us the reason to pull the trigger on like going all in and making Church Anywhere its own kind of separate thing with a staff. Before, it was just me and a bunch of volunteers. And now we have 4 staff members. So we're able to do exponentially more with 4 staff members and those volunteers. And so it kind of gave the COVID-19 stuff kind of gave us the rationale to pull the trigger on that specifically. And then once we did that, it was kind of off to the races. We've been experimenting with new ways to reach people online, and we've been adjusting our service to have call to action more within the service for people online and in microsites. So for example, like a worship pastor might be singing a song about grace, and right beforehand, now he can look at a camera and say, comment below the time that God showed you grace.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've adjusted the way we do our online services to be specifically for online audiences. So I'm sitting right now in a studio that we built post COVID that looks like a living room. That's where we're doing all of our worship services from. Even though we're back in the building in person on Sundays, we're still doing our online services in here.
Wow. And that kind of, in a way that kind of makes it a little bit more personable, right? And relating to the audience that's on, the online congregants, if you will, that are online, that are connecting with the church and the ministry, which I think, I guess kind of leads me to the next part of my question is, what do you see, when we did, I think you were part of the Church Online Summit here just a couple of months ago. And so when we all kind of participated and contributed to helping other churches and ministries kind of look at where they need to get to in the next part of the process, did you, what are some of the things you're seeing or you're hearing from a lot of the people that, come to you and say, hey, you guys have been doing this for a while. Can you help walk us through maybe some of the steps, and what are some of the things maybe you might suggest to some other ministries or churches that are probably still trying to get up to speed, right? Even though maybe trying to do something for a period of time, do you see other opportunities that maybe we should be thinking things? And I think we all agree on that in terms of the opportunity which you just shared of the digital reach.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've noticed, so I've probably talked, this is not an exaggeration, I've probably talked to 100 churches since late March. There's not that many people in the United States that can say they are the lead pastor of a digital church plant. So with COVID, that title alone came with like tons of questions for people trying to get into ministry online. So it's been a weird season.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, the questions revolve around technology. Like what camera should I get? Like what streaming service should I get? Things like that. And every time I try to guide that conversation to something that I tell my team all the time, which is relationship trumps technology, period. So like, you don't have to have the newest like red camera or the crazy expensive like Westcott lighting or something. What you need is a good camera that you can afford for $500 or $600 and some creativity, and you can start from there. And then that way you can really focus in on, instead of learning new gear, you can focus in on reaching people.
Right.
And most of the time their expression is like, but what do you mean? Like, what do we buy? So it's a hard flip to or switch to flip because when you think of the internet, you think of technology,
right,
and not relationships. A few years ago, my job description changed, like the physical job description changed to one of my responsibilities each year is to try to know 100 people online. And that really changed the way that we do ministry. It became less about the production value and less about the content and more about how can I use the production and use the content in order to facilitate relationship.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's important. I mean, and I share that a little bit about myself in terms of just, where I'm at and with the technology of thinking about just the aspect of, it's a tool, it's a means and a vehicle to get to the next point in the destination, but the obvious priority are those that you're talking to and communicate with online, right?
Yep.
And the underpinnings and the pillars, if you will, of the infrastructure can be handled, and those can be, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think that a lot of people have said, well, what do I go do? What do I go buy? And I'm like, well, if you don't have it in house, then maybe bring somebody in that can kind of help work with you and develop that process. But the main, and Steve Fogg said exactly what you stated, was, just it doesn't have to be a big production, right? It doesn't have to be something that, in terms, and I don't hate to use the word production, but just in terms of the overall look and feel of it, right? You can be very straightforward in your approach, because our main priority obviously is to reach those that are online and to
Right.
communicate and make that, as you said, the relationship, right? And make the
Yeah.
connection with the individual or those that are watching online.
Yeah. You can sit in front of a window with an iPhone and get good video quality in today's society. But we've put a lot of we've over COVID specifically, we tried to do church the way that it's always been done and focus on just like the weekend service being the king.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been hard for a lot of churches that don't have the budget or the person on staff to make that happen.
Right.
And so it's forced people to get creative and start using other types of content rather than the weekend service to reach people. And it's been fun to watch that happen. It's just most of the time the first instinct of a church that wants to go online is how do I make my weekend service better?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's no totally true. And I think that's it, and I think that's kind of what I was doing a video the other day and recording it. And what I talked about getting up to speed was just getting stable, right? Getting,
Mhm.
stabilizing your approach and what you're doing. So now you talked about the digital microsites. Do you see that as kind of another area of growth and opportunity? What does that look like in terms of maybe describe what the microsite, because some people may not be familiar with that term. I know exactly what you're talking about, but from a microsite, what would that, I know that you've shared that online and we've been on Facebook and discussions and the online church forum. Just curious, from your perspective, how are you as a ministry in a church taking that in terms of that microsite?
Yeah, and that's been something we've done for a long time. So we're in our fourth year of microsites, which was a blessing in itself as well because we already had that infrastructure. So when COVID hit, we were able to have people gather in their homes to worship together. Um, but for us, the microsite strategy was simply because we're in the back end of a dead end street in the wrong side of town with no room to grow. And so we're in a blue collar society that doesn't, we don't bring in a ton of money. So multi siting wasn't really an option. Another campus wasn't an option. And so we simply went to microsites in order to grow. And then from there, it kind of expanded into less of like a watch party feel and more of like a cause based initiative feel. So we've got volunteers from our church that have started microsites in obviously neighborhoods, but also in youth orphanages and like jails and prisons and nursing homes and things like that, because that's what they're passionate about. And because microsites are very easy to open, we've been able to empower them to be leaders within their causes through this microsite as a tool.
That's pretty awesome. I think that's and I think that's a blessing because you have that you know. And I think that's something that we kind of look at. So okay, so we've talked about kind of the reach in the digital church. Now Tyler's up on this is working on something. I'm going to let him share this because this is more on his area. But we talked about the creativity, right? Where do we take things from a perspective of that digital reach when it comes to online streaming and how we're doing things? Tyler, maybe you can share about that the project. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about something you're working on that you've kind of shared on Facebook and talked a little bit about. Maybe share about this movie project you're working on.
Sure. This all stems from this idea of we call it digital missionaries. One of the things that we've been really trying to switch our mindset on over the last year or so has been how do we take specific platforms on the internet and then use them as a mission field? So, for example, like I started a personal YouTube channel, so I'm going to be a missionary to YouTube, and we have a strategy built to bring people from content all the way down to community. We have our digital engagement pastor is taking TikTok, and she's just trying to do everything she can to reach people on TikTok.
Wow.
Our yeah,
That's
it's
massive.
working.
That's
Listen to
massive.
this. She prayed individually with 45 families last week on TikTok,
Wow.
like through direct message. It's crazy. It's so cool.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, so cool. So this whole idea of like let's hone in on specific demographics and specific platforms and let's do it. So we have several people on our production team here at First Capital. We do a ton of video ministry. Obviously, we're a digital church plant, and so we decided, what if we tried to reach people through making a movie? Um, we did like a short movie a couple of years ago that was like locally released, but this time we wanted to go all out. So for the last year and a half, we've been working on this project to try to reach people through the media format. And we're going to release it this winter. And we just almost wrapped up shooting. We have like one more shoot that we have to do that's kind of on hold because of some COVID stuff right now. But I'm really excited to see how God uses it. The coolest part of this whole process has been our lead actor ended up being from Columbus, Ohio,
Hmm.
and he ended up giving his life to Christ on set, and we got to baptize him as a movie crew, which was super cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is that is awesome.
Like if nobody ever watches the movie, it was worth it for that. So
Yeah. We talk about reaching the many, but then there's the one, right?
yeah,
And doing that. Wow, that's a fantastic testimony. What that's pretty. So you know, and I think this is actually really interesting that you're doing this because I think you're right. I mean, I think especially if more and more people are online,
mhm,
and you know, the analytics in terms of the industry, in terms of the streaming industry, and things that we look at, more and more people are spending time online. They're connecting through various, you know, whether it's mobile or you mentioned TikTok,
right,
or some other type of platform they use on a day-to-day basis, or maybe it's a connected TV app like on Roku or Fire app or Apple TV, right? So we have like this really diverse, I call it almost this smorgasbord of activity occurring on the in the online space, and seeing more people, and the stats are showing that. Do you, in terms of the delivery of, and I don't ask you to details, do you see an area of where, as you talked about people connecting on like TikTok and different platforms, do you see one particular area? I know we've got the common ones, YouTube and Facebook, but do you see other platforms, things that are generating a lot of activity in terms of?
um, I mean, you have your regular social media stuff. We're pretty intentional about drawing people back to our website. That's the only, like you've seen all the news about TikTok possibly being banned in the United States. Facebook changes things like every week. So that's the only real estate that we own is our website. So the connections that we make, we're really pushing people to our own website. Like for example, our TikTok, the engagement pastor that's doing TikTok, she's making like 11 to 13-second videos that mostly deal with anxiety and mental health issues. And she's like paralleling those with a blog on our website. So if she recently she did one where she took her glasses off and she focused her phone camera through the glasses and then took the glasses away and just said, "This is what it looks like through my eyes." And then she made a blog post about how we often don't see things through other people's perspective. So this TikTok video pushed people to this blog post that was on our website. And then there was an option to connect with a pastor at the end of the blog post. And that's how she was able to pray with several people during that specific video.
What a great opportunity! You know, that's really unique, and again, it's, you know, it's taking something that we may not even think about, right? But if we look at the other person and kind of their view perspective, and obviously we can talk about, like you said, you know, all about the technology and the tools that we use. But the reality is, there's a human being or person on the other end of that
Right.
connection point, right? And there are people there that it's real life, real things are happening, regardless of where you're located.
Sure.
And in doing that, so, you know, before the other question I was going to ask you, so as you kind of look at those platforms and doing, and we talked about that, I'm not going to ask you to go too many details on this because I know this is a broad topic, but I will ask the question: what's your perspective on the analytics, right? In terms of when we're reaching these people and we're doing these things, a lot of questions come up from different ministries or organizations and churches. We've talked about the analytics. How do we count them? How do we look at that? With COVID, it's substantially changed.
Mhm.
You know, just in maybe a couple of moments, what's your perspective on the analytics side? What do you view as the, you know, we talk about the connection, but are we, from a measurement, is there something that you're looking at and how you manage that process?
Sure. Yeah, we do. We do something called an engagement scorecard, and on that scorecard, there's a health score and an attendance trend. That's kind of what we share with the rest of our leadership. So each month they'll see that if the attendance is trending upward or downward, so that just has like an arrow up or down, and that would include things like microsite attendance, the prisoners, how many are watching, and then it would also include like adult ministry online views, kids ministry online views, and then the weekend service views. For weekend service, we call them quality views, but we count 15 minutes or more as a view.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the attendance trend. And then the health score is basically next steps that are weighted. So, like if you join the Church Anywhere group, that's worth 1 point. But if you get baptized, that's worth 5 points. And if you start a new microsite and commit for the year for a microsite, that's worth 10 points. So we have like, I think, 11 or 12 different next steps that we count each week. And at the end of the month, we get one score that we weigh against the previous months.
That's awesome. And I think this is that generating from mostly from your website? Are you and as you pull that score? Because I think this has been a big question. Everybody's been talking about Facebook and YouTube stats, and we always kind of I think, throw different numbers. Some people like to count 1 second, 3 second, 1 minute. Do you those different platforms all present kind of a what I call a bit of complexity in terms of how you measure the data, right? I'm not to get too geeky here for a moment, but how we look at that analyze that information and then put that into a format like, and I let you perk my ears up, and you talked about this online, and that's a scorecard. I think that's a perfect format because it really kind of gives leadership a visual to understand where we're at, right?
Right. Well, if we just count, it'd be the same thing as counting butts and seats in physical. If you only count attendance or 3 second views or 20 second views or whatever you count, that's not a clear picture of health. But if you count next steps, that is a pretty clear picture of health. So like if my health score is 400 in July, but then in August it's only like 360, I can go back and pinpoint which next steps fell through. So maybe we had less baptisms in August, or maybe we had less people signing up for our weekly Bible study in August. And so we can adjust in September to really push that one that was a little bit down the month before.
Wow, that's awesome. I like it. I love it. I think that's just you shared this a while back when the pandemic was happening, and we were all kind of going back and forth on Facebook and trying to come up with different ways we could help other ministries and churches. And you shared a little bit about that, and it really, and just as you've talked about that, I think that's a fantastic tool that others could do that. So, okay, we've talked about a lot of different things here, and so is there a way for people to reach out to you? Is there a way to connect? You've got your project, you've got things you're working on. What would be the best way for people that may want to follow up after watching this interview and us just having this little bit of a dialogue here today, a way to connect with you or the ministry?
Yeah. You can email me at tyler@churchanywhere.us, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can on that one. Or you can follow me on Facebook. It's Facebook.com/real Tyler Sansom.
That's perfect. So and for those that are when I get this posted on the various destinations, but I will put that in the description as well, so that you can follow up with Tyler and do that as well. But Tyler, you did a terrific job. It's always fun when you try to explain the address. It's like back in the the days of we used to say dib dib dib, which is www, and the website address. And you're like, what is he saying? Why is he saying dib 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 for? And so it wasn't an old 50s song. It was just, it's a poor technology geek person's viewpoint of the world. So Tyler, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. You got a lot going on, but it's been a blessing just to connect with you online on Facebook. And I just want to thank you for all that you're doing in the ministry, and just if you shared your heart and kind of where the ministry's at and what you guys are up to. I think this 2020 is no doubt, one of, I don't even know if we can even put it in words other than I would say this is that I think what you said earlier, the opportunity now is there for us
Sure.
to go do more. And obviously from a digital format and an opportunity online, we can reach and engage with people and really connect with them to build that meaningful relationship, and for them to see the church as an opportunity to come in. And I think that's a blessing in that relationship with the Lord and talking about that. So thank you for being with me today and doing this interview. And I'm just so blessed to have you here. And hopefully those that are watch this video, again, reach out to Tyler, or you can reach out to
Mhm.
me and connect with me as well. We're here. If you're in a challenging spot right now, let it. We're here to help. And that was the
Yep.
point of what we said a couple of months ago was, yeah, we got busy. We're busy and we've got a lot of things going on, and it may take us a little bit of time to get back. But it's not to say that it's a community,
Mhm.
and it's shoulder to shoulder and working with each other. So Tyler, thank you, and I'm going to be praying for you on this movie project because I know you've got a lot of exciting things in the days ahead.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on here.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Look forward to bringing the next interview, and we'll be talking soon.